faculty, smaller student body, and so forth in terms of getting the classes our students need in order to kind of follow through on our vision. And could you comment on that?
Yeah. So the programs here at UO Portland don't have the core general education courses delivered here through this campus. Okay. So there's a little bit of a different dynamic. We've got graduate programs here, and one of the things that we're working through for the Balmer program is, you know, the original design for that was to have 2 years in Eugene and then to have students transition here to the Portland campus, and we're working with students to see just how viable that is for them, because, you know, as you can imagine, spending a couple of years at Eugene and then 2 years in coming up here is something that that some students are willing to do, but others are thinking reluctant to do that. So we're thinking very dynamically with Kate McLaughlin and the team at Balmer about, you know, how we can partner with Portland Community College, Portland State, other kinds of colleges here in the Portland area to make that program more dynamic and robust. But so it's a little bit of a different dynamic here than it is on the Eugene campus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The questions. Yep, Elisa.
Chris, on the HSI, one of the things the trustees have heard a lot from students and administration is doing dual language on our website. Is that something we can work out, and where are we on that?
Yeah, this is something that we're looking at through this work group. So the work group has been charged to look holistically at what we're doing to ensure that our Latinx community feels fully at home on the campus. And so that will be one of the elements that we're looking at more closely. The same goes for admissions tours, making sure that, you know, it's easy to get access to a Spanish-speaking tour and have students as they come just feel like, you know, their whole family can be part of the tour. So we have we have that in our eyesight here for working on. Thanks.
Anything of note when you started to do, or maybe you haven't gotten through it yet, the analysis on the DF, no credit withdrawal?
So we are that analysis is ongoing. So what my hope is that this next couple of terms here we'll be able to identify some courses that are problematic and that are challenging, so that we can do the work we need to do to revise the curriculum. You know, I know there's often students that get hung up in the math courses or other kinds of things where, you know, with some real work with our faculty, we can adjust those. So I'm not ready yet to identify specific courses, but we're definitely taking a look at that. Yeah.
Toya?
Yeah. And to both those questions, Amy's as well, is there support or communications going to the staff at culturally specific spaces within the campus, so that students who, you know, like Black students who go to those places are getting that support there as well?
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, I think the reason why I'm emphasizing this notion of institutional habits is because I think the kind of communication that you're talking about is critical, and it needs to be just part of how we work together and the kinds of messaging that we give. So it needs to saturate all aspects of the campus. Yeah.
All right, we are live streaming now, so we're up and we're back on schedule. Chris, I want to make a comment. I want to thank you. And for those that are listening who may present in the future, I think you're a standard that I hope others aspire to. One, you said you would be 10 minutes and you were 10 minutes.
Yeah. I timed myself. So.
But more important than that, in your 10 minutes, you gave us substance. It's easy to come here and present and talk about how wonderful we are and everybody's working hard and doing that, which of course everybody is. But you added to that, you talked about what we're going to do for timely graduation. You talked about 15 credits. You talked about DF and W. You talked about in-person advising, specific things we're doing to make a change. We appreciate that. We went on to talk about contract negotiations, sensitive subject, but you're also positive and optimistic, as we will get through it, and we will do it in the future as well. And then finally with Hispanic serving institutions. We appreciate the substance. It advances it, allows us to have it in 10 minutes with good questions as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Continuing on timely graduation, I'm going to turn this over to Elisa Horniker.
Thank you, Steve. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee met by Zoom on December 2nd, and all members were present. We were there to hear from the 3 colleges presenting new program approval and location changes. Information packets have been given out to all committee members so they could study them, and items such as rationale for the program or location change, budget, expenses, how the course would fit within our mission, expected headcounts and outcomes, and budget and career opportunities were all discussed. So then other topics were also discussed with the deans, the associate deans, and their teams as we held the meeting. From the College of Design, approval was requested for a location change from Portland to Eugene campus for the Master of Science in Historic Preservation. From the College of Arts and Sciences, approval was requested for a new degree in Material Science and Technology. And from the College of Education, approval was requested for a new Education Specialist degree and the added location of the Portland campus. The committee voted unanimously to approve referring each of those motions to the full board today. And you'll hear briefly today from presenters, and then there'll be a time for them to speak about 5 minutes and then 5 minutes for question and answers, knowing that the committee has already kind of done its homework and its legwork. This new process of the committee meeting 2 weeks before every quarterly board meeting will provide us with insights and an opportunity to discuss any items that come under our purview and be able to come to the board with an educated and unified motion. So with that, I would like to start with our first presenter, the Masters in Historic Preservation, Dean Adrian Parzaretsky. You could please come forward. Dean, you have about 5 minutes for speaking and 5 minutes for questions.
Wonderful. Thank
On
you for
Steve's
having
agenda.
me. And I want to first start by congratulating Jane Gordon and her team. And I think I saw Chuck step in briefly here. But just what an amazing job they've done in an incredibly short timeline. Turn over this campus, fill it with light, open up the spaces, and make it such a welcoming environment for our students. And the College of Design is incredibly grateful. Our spaces. I'd also like to thank the Board of Trustees for changing the process and allowing us to meet for this particular meeting so that we have time for mutual self-reflection and if there are any other additional questions, then we've also got space and time to answer those questions thoughtfully. So without further ado, I'll move along to the presentation that I shared with the board that Elisa was referring to in that previous meeting. And just a little bit of background and history on the Historic Preservation Program. It was up and running for 36 years at the Eugene campus. That's where it began. And then it moved to Portland with the launching of the White Stag campus. And we also received 2 endowed professorships to help support the program. But over time, between 2016 and 2024, there were a series of challenges that the program was encountering. And I think one of the biggest ones was removing it from the context of the College of Design, where we were able to leverage all the instructional support across other parts of the School of Architecture and Environment. And it increased the costs of the program. We had to start hiring many more pro-tem faculty, for example, even though we had these 2 endowed positions. So when I came to the university approximately 4 years ago now, just shy of that, I noticed that over time the enrollments were struggling, costs had started to go up, and I became concerned about the viability of the program. And it was then that we started exploring what were some of the things that we could do to help resuscitate that. And it was decided that probably the best thing to do was to move it back to Eugene, where we were able to leverage all the instructional resources that we had within the college, all the administrative resources that we have within the college, and to sort of infuse new energy back into the program. And there was a logical moment to do this when our endowed director left the program and retired. And then our assistant professor, tenure track professor, who was also endowed, decided to return to practice. So we had an opening there, an obvious logical opening where we graduated out that last class. We put forward an IHP proposal successfully to fill the endowed director role with a view to moving it back to Eugene in time for the new director to start and then to reinvigorate the program. And at the same time, we've also lowered the number of credits that students need to take in the program. So in alignment with President Schultz's Oregon Rising plan towards timely graduation and to actually having sort of a robust program with many more, fewer obstacles is probably what I'm trying to get at, fewer obstacles to graduation by having classes that are on offer on a regular basis, which we could do in Eugene with all the extra instructional resources that we have there. We were able to lower it from 73 to 60 credits to complete the entire degree. So we have a search out at the moment to fill the endowed position. We're not going to fill the second endowed position until the director is in place. And the goal is that the program is back in Eugene, all going well with, your approval. I also think we've got more interdisciplinary options if we move it back to Eugene. So we're starting to explore 4+1 offerings out of our undergraduate programs, such as the environmental design degree, and also the undergraduate degree in 3PM, Planning, Public Policy and Management. So once again, that is very much in alignment with President Schultz's Oregon Rising plan, this idea of a pathway, timely pathway to graduation, where students in 5 years would end up with a graduate degree that includes historic preservation. This is an area where students are in high demand. Once they do graduate, they're all going into full employment. And it will also enable us to work on crafting a certificate program, which we mentioned in the meeting that we had, which is a fairly easy thing to implement. We've already got the courses in play. Many of our architecture, interior architecture, and landscape architecture are seeking additional historic preservation offerings because it makes them more competitive as well when they go out onto the job market. So all going well, the program could come back to Eugene. We've looked at the financials for this, and we are whole. And then once you start to factor in that we've got already 2 endowed professorships, and that along with the graduate tuition, we're confident that the program will be able to be revitalized as a result of this move back to Eugene. I'll hand it over to the board for any questions.
I have an overarching question for you. I notice in every campus we're assuming no attrition. So if we say we have 20 students, and we're going to graduate 20, that doesn't make sense. A student attrition during that time.
Yeah, so we are definitely working on our budget process for these proposals. So we intend to have a more standardized way of assessing that particularly attrition, but also the other costs associated with this. So this was, I think we've improved on the process this time, but we're still working on it. I think it's true. You can't just assume that we're going to have 20. Everybody will graduate. Now, on the other hand, we may get transfer students in and other kinds of things. So we will be monitoring the success of these programs as we move forward.
I think just I have to try to figure out, like, are we doing a 1 year on new programs? Seems smiling. So
Well, I shouldn't say we're doing it once a year. We did this last year, and it was a good practice to look at all the programs that have been added, right? Is that what you're asking? And then are they meeting the budgets or the pro forma we thought? So that's something we will continue to do.
And just to add to that point, I think one of the additional benefits of having the program in Eugene is that we can have, to put it in sort of crude manner, more butts in seats in these classes. So we won't be reliant just upon historic preservation program students being in the classes. As we open it up for other students across the college to also take some of these classes, we'll also be able to increase class sizes. And that was one of the challenges that we were also encountering when it was relocated up to Portland.
Amy?
Thank you. It's nice to meet you in person. So I had I had two questions, but my first one has to do with the internship opportunities with the movement back to Eugene for the program and so forth. And I did appreciate your packet in terms of just the need for the demand for students with this kind of background. So that's exciting. I know we have museums and so forth in Eugene, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you're envisioning there in terms of supporting students getting some practical experience prior to graduating?
Love that question. Actually, the program has embedded in it, it's kind of like a practicum that they do over summer with the national parks, and we've been doing that for many years. It's been integral to the program, and actually we use that program, we leverage that program also as a recruitment device, because my understanding is that the national parks have also got their own people that are taking during that summer period. So they get hands-on experience, summer practicum.
Very good. Thank you. And then the other question, I guess, is maybe more broadly relative to our involvement with review of these new programs and so forth. I do appreciate the annual review of how things are coming along relative to the projections and so forth. But I was also curious about how we are looking at programs that maybe aren't thriving, such as this program here in Portland, because of the fact that we've had, we're changing it. And how this committee maybe is involved in program retirement or reevaluation and so forth, because it is always so much easier to build and add than it is to subtract and reevaluate. And I know it's very sometimes politically hard to do that, but I think we also have to be very conscientious about the budget for the university and how we sustain our great programs and still meet needs of employers and students, balancing a lot of those factors. So
maybe I could respond to that briefly, Amy. This is really part of the work of a dean and the provost working together to identify the programs that are struggling and to discern exactly how we're going to respond to that. A challenge not only that we have not only the ones that you're recognizing, namely it's always more difficult to close things. There are instances where closing something doesn't necessarily save money because we have tenure line faculty connected with the university more broadly. And so if part of their teaching is either connected or maybe no longer connected to a program, it's not like, okay, if we close that program, we're automatically going to save the resources that come with that. So it's a complicated business, and we're working, I think, on the committee, and I'm happy to have ongoing conversations with that. We definitely need to be responsible stewards of the resources for sure.
Add to that point, Chris, that's exactly what we're trying to do by moving it back to Eugene, recognizing, we've got 2 endowed professorships that are specific to this program, but we don't have any other endowed professorships. We're having to pay for all the additional instructional costs. So moving it back to Eugene, we're now contracting the costs around the resources needed to deliver the program, because we've got many other faculties teaching that also apply, the elective, they can be electives and whatnot as part of the program that they would be teaching anyway. So by leveraging the resources that are on the main campus and also the administrative resources too, like reducing costs there by moving it back, we're hopeful that that contraction needed to deliver the program will once again help the program to be more viable.
yes, I think you've just described the poster child for making change. So thank you.
Adrian, I have a question, then we'll take a vote. Could you pull the mic in a little bit closer to you? Great. You made a comment that caught me. I don't think you meant it this way,
Yeah.
but you said to get timely graduation, we're going to lower the number of credits from 73 to 60, which feels like maybe we should lower it to 20. So it sounded funny to me. And could you just speak to what that, I mean, is we just making it easier or?
No, that's a terrific question. And this was the result of many, many conversations with faculty that have taught in the program and alumni from the program, with academic leadership across the college. We were hoping to lower it even more, but they put forward a very good case as to why certain courses needed to stay within the program. And we all came to agreement that the 60 credits, it wasn't really just the credits. We got to 60 credits through another mechanism of really outlining what are all the subject areas that these students have to cover in order to come out with a degree that has integrity and has value on the market. And so let's start from that place, from the content, and then let's figure out what are the minimum number of credits that align with those goals. And when we started doing that, we landed in the 60 credit mark.
Okay. Thank you. Good questions. We call for the, okay. So we need a motion to approve moving the historic preservation program back to Eugene. I need a second. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Elisa. Back to you, Lisa.
Today, representing the CAS, College of Arts and Sciences. We have Elliot and Jason, who were on our Zoom earlier this week. Elliot, Brian, and Jason, please. Do I have the right names here? I'm sorry. Forward to
Hello, good
do
morning.
the presentation in the BA and BS in Material Sciences.
Thank you. Good
I think they're
morning.
on Zoom.
Oh,
I-
sorry.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Gonna show up behind. They're gonna show up behind me here. Is that what it is?
Not yet.
Yeah. Hope they don't have to look at the back of my head.
Good morning, folks. Can you hear me?
Maybe that's better.
Hello?
Oh,
you-
there we go.
Hi,
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. This is Elliot Berkman. Would the host mind allowing me to share a video? Not share screen, just it's not letting me turn on my camera.
We're working on it, Elliot.
Okay,
We just see
appreciate
a
it. Well-
green screen here, but we can hear you.
Well, good morning. Thank you for taking the time. I trust that'll get resolved shortly, so I'll just begin. First, I want to start by thanking the trustees for taking the time to review this proposal. And I'd also like to thank my colleague from the college, Jason Paulus, who's here as well. Jason is an associate professor in the Department of Physics and has been instrumental in moving this proposal forward. Let's see, we have some slides, and I'll move through the slides and then hopefully we can have some discussion. Let's see. All right. Well, let me just walk you through the Material Science and Technology program. This is an interdisciplinary program between physics and chemistry that will train students in the connections between the kind of basic atomic molecular structure of various materials, the properties of those materials, and then the technological and engineering processing methods and practical applications. So it's a joint program. Some key highlights about why we are focusing on this program now. I mean, one is that there's a tremendous societal need for a greater workforce in this area. The CHIPS and Science Act is one thing that we can point to at the federal level. And in the state of Oregon, the semiconductor industry is projecting tremendous demand. And right now, the latest reports from the HEC are quite clear that we are not producing enough degrees in this area. This is a natural place for the University of Oregon to be. We have strength in material science. Our departments of physics and chemistry are quite strong in this area. Of course, the Knight campus for accelerating scientific impact also has strength in this area. So this is a collaborative area that we are already quite strong in and planning to grow. Let's see here. I can turn on my video now. There we go. Hello, everybody. And then should I share screen or
Elliot, I can advance your slides from here.
That's excellent. Thank you, Cody. Could we maybe move to the connections? Why don't we move to this slide? I think it's looks like slide 33 in the packet, but it's slide 3 on our proposal. There we go. Thank you. So this is, it's a natural thing. As this slide shows, there's 35 faculty in this area. They're quite well funded, very strong graduate programs. And we have outstanding facilities that have already benefited from the CHIPS and Science Act related to this kind of research. This is a degree that is highly industry relevant. As I noted, the HEC is, quite clear about this, that there are jobs in this area and that we are not producing enough degrees. And then the research-based pedagogy, this is a great alignment with our strategic plan to have both better career readiness and then also better experiential learning during our degree programs. So much of the training is quite hands-on, where folks are working in research labs, using the technology for chip, fabrication, learning the basics of sensing and materials characterization. Next slide, please. We've already made quite a bit of investment in terms of faculty hiring in this area, and we're currently hiring another faculty member in materials. So the additional investment that would be required by this program amounts to graduate employee GE terms to help support the additional seats in the classes. And a lot of that, if you look at the projections in the budget, what we're planning is to stage it out so that the initial investment would be quite small, 2 or 3 terms. And then or only if and as the program grows, we'll add additional graduate employees and faculty to support the demand. Next, I think that was it. We can keep it fairly simple. I also just want to recognize that we presented this in the ASAC committee. The committee had some very good questions about the budget, which I'm happy to address more fully here. Really about what is the resource investment, and I want to emphasize that it's primarily faculty hiring that is already planned, faculty hiring and costs associated with that, for example, startup funds.
Elliot, would you just go ahead and say what those questions were and address it? The financials look like it's a loss all the time, but if you look at the numbers, it's not. So could you speak to that?
Yes, I could. I think we have slides on that. I don't know, where is this?
Steve, while he's pulling that up, I think that was my question. When I was looking at the budget, it showed we were hiring faculty, but it didn't show any costs in it. And there's a note that said something to the effect of already accounted for, so there's no cost. And I was trying to push the question of,
right,
there's a cost associated with it. How are we accounting for that?
That's right. And that I'm looking at page 31 in the packet, and that shows the fuller kind of built out recurring resources and the costs. Provost Long may be able to weigh in on this as well, but the cost of hiring faculty is something that we factor into our regular operations. When we hire faculty, we always know, especially in the sciences, there's going to be costs for startup, for space renovations, and that's baked in. I mean, in the sense of relative to this program, we will be doing these hires regardless.
Well, the numbers that I was looking at is the total cost to the program. Let's just look out in year 4.
Right.
It's basically 700,000. That's what it says on the spreadsheet. And then it has total resources, but $1 million $6,050,000. And then it has grad net revenue as a negative $1 million. So I think I'm reading it wrong. It looks like there is excess revenue over cost, but I'd like you to speak. Can you speak to that? That's a little spreadsheet.
Yeah,
budget.
and that spreadsheet, I mean, partly, I think we're still working out how to show the budget for these. What that is the cost of primarily the main drivers of that cost are the tenure track faculty. And the revenue for those revenue associated with the faculty is well more than only the revenue associated with this program. We wouldn't be hiring faculty just to teach in a material science undergrad degree, right? These faculty will be active researchers in physics and chemistry, so they'll teach across both departments, right, across the curriculum, and we'll be bringing in external funding in terms of grants. So I think the revenue is not fully captured, and we're probably overstating the cost in the effort to be totally transparent of this is what it costs to hire 2 brand new tenure track faculty.
Chris, maybe you want to speak
Yeah.
to, because we shouldn't be working on the budget when we come here. We should have it done.
Correct. Yes, Cody and I have talked about, and well, Lisa too, talked about needing to have a more robust and standard template for these proposals, and we're definitely going to have that moving forward. Yeah, Marcia.
So here's the act. Is there, you know, into that, look into when what they're trying to do as well as
Sorry, I'm having
Yeah.
hearing.
Can you hear that, Elliot?
No.
Okay. So the question really has to do with have we analyzed the reference to the CHIPS Act and the resources that might be coming that way related to the new administration and their plans?
No, we haven't. It's a little unclear whether and how the new administration will affect this. We can certainly speak at the state level. The CHIPS Act is federal legislation that's law, and the state is now distributing those funds. We've already been the beneficiary of at least $2 million that I'm aware of that we've invested in facilities here to support this work and this teaching. So we do anticipate that will continue, though we haven't included that in the budget.
Steve, I had a question. I was really excited to see the potential research opportunities, really excited to see already the 18 million in research funding. So kind of building a little bit on what Marcia's raising, when you look out 5-10 years, what are the research opportunities for this program?
It's a great question. It's moving so quickly. It's hard to project what, say 10 years, but clearly in the foreseeable future, the AI revolution is really accelerating research on certain kinds of chips. GPUs, we've all heard quite a bit about that. There's one of the big players in the state is Intel, and there's some turmoil there in terms of responding to that shift in the market. But there's a number of other industry companies in Oregon that we have partnerships, including NVIDIA, right? One of the the largest GPU manufacturer. So I think that is the focus now. The other emerging technology is quantum computing, and that's another area that our materials faculty are invested in and are making significant contributions to. I wonder, Jason, in terms of the 5 to 10 year outlook for the industry, I'd be curious if you have further thoughts.
Yeah, yes. So I think you mentioned both of the ones. So in semiconductors, one area we're really excited about is at some point and this really runs into quantum. At some point, we need to find technologies that will replace the way we're building microprocessors chips right now. That will involve fundamentally coming to terms with the fact that electrons are quantum objects, and we will have to use that fact. And that's why quantum computing is seen as the next step in advancing computing along the amazing advances it's had. And material science is really fundamental to getting electrons to talk to each other, to being able to control them. There are faculty in our physics and chemistry departments who are thinking about using optics, using photons to convey quantum information. How will that interface with a quantum processor? What are the materials we need to be able to control electrons and light at those scales? Those are really the kinds of questions that the faculty that we're hoping to attract to teach these programs, and also push forward the research opportunities that students will be able to access. Those are two of the main areas.
So I know the area is changing very rapidly, and I was curious, is there a way to kind of rethink how we're serving up the education deliverables for students to meet industry demand? I mean, it just seems like we're chasing our tail in a way. So how do we, by the time the program's up and going, it's like you're saying, no, now we're not focused on this, we're focused on quantum and all of that. And I was just kind of wondering, is there a certificate type program and other kinds of things that we can be introducing that students can bolt on, come back to the university to get what they need to modernize? My generation looked at things like a career, right? You're in an industry for 30 or 40 years and you retire. And it's not the same, obviously, anymore. And young people are in a shorter term cycle here to, with regards to their jobs. So anyway, could you comment, given just the circumstance within your industry, which is so fraught with change, right? Thank you.
It's such a great question. I wish I could do it justice into a short time that we have. That's a long story, but I will address directly. We do plan to offer a certificate, and we also plan to offer a 3+1 or 4+1 or 3+2 master's degree that addresses industry demand. We are quite engaged with our industry partners in listening and trying to understand what it is that they are looking for. And they're very clear what they're looking for, and which is they want to see students coming out not only with the technical skills, but also with existing experiences in their industry. So things like internship placements. And so we're actively partnering with them for those things. The broader point, I think, is, though, how do we train students for careers that change so rapidly? And my quick thought is this is one of the reasons students would want to come to a liberal arts school and learn these fundamental skills, as opposed to an engineering program, for example. I think it's a competitive advantage in this landscape that our students come in training not only with the engineering-like tools, how to build these things, how to actually use the tools that will be obsolete in 18 months, in 2 years, but they also understand the fundamental physics and the fundamental chemistry and the fundamental liberal arts principles too, right? They come out knowing all these things that will be general and applicable across domains, regardless of where the technology goes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Dean. Did you have one more quick? We can do one more quick question and then it won't be. Okay.
It won't be.
I think this will be a conversation that when we have Kaz come back to speak with us, that we can talk about, because obviously there's interest on that.
Yes. And I'll just add, Chris will be back.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Chris sends his regards and will be joining you in person tomorrow.
Could we get David's question maybe on the record just to out?
Yeah, my question was just, you had a lot of comparative data on other universities, and overall, like, completion for the degree has dropped by 25 years. Most comparable institutions like University of Arizona and University of Wisconsin, just in the last year, saw their completion drop by 30% and 88%. So I was just kind of curious what differentiates us to make sure that we're not going to be
Yeah. We were also puzzled to see those data, and I think there are two things going on. One is that, if you look in the 2019 to 2022 window, a drop in completions is not surprising because of COVID, right? Fewer people enrolled to begin with. So that's one factor. The other factor is that we looked at the numbers and, in terms of percentage, there's a drop, but the numbers were actually quite small. And I think what was happening is the Lightcast data that we were using was focusing only on programs that were titled exactly material science. And many of the programs in this area are actually called material science and engineering or something to that effect. And so if you broaden the search and look at programs that have that engineering appendix, which is a much larger set of programs and probably more comparable to the one that we're actually offering, we don't see a drop. And in fact, there's an increase. And all the data, again, from HEC, from the state, even at the federal level, really shows a huge demand for degrees in this area.
Thank you, David.
The Academic and Student Affairs Committee, who's vetted this, recommends that we approve it, correct? Yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Right. Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. One thing, Chris, I think you're hearing this and you've mentioned about some more structure to what's going on so that we anticipate some of the questions and get it solved. I think that'll be an improvement.
Yes, we anticipated that, and Elisa and I were, and with Cody's help, we're able to have that meeting beforehand last week, which was helpful. But we'll improve this process.
Yep. Okay, Elisa.
Thank you. Our last presenter today is Dean Laura Lee McIntyre from the College of Education, and she's going to discuss the education specialist degree and then move between Portland and Eugene, both locations. Thank you, Laura Lee.
Thank you, Elisa. And I think we have clinical professor Angie Whalen on Zoom. Angie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Great. I will advance your slides.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And thank you to the board for reviewing our proposal today. We're here to talk about the school psychology program, which is housed in the College of Education. We're in the Department of Special Education and Clinical Sciences. And we have both a master's and doctoral programs in our school psychology program currently. We've been around since at least the 1980s. And our main goal is preparing psychologists who will work in K-12 public school settings. So supporting youth behavioral and mental health in schools and supporting educators and school systems. And today we're really here to focus on a proposal for our master's degree program. Our program currently offers a 3-year full-time program. It's over 90 credits, and it's designed to be comparable to an education specialist degree. So if you're not familiar with that, it's an EDS or education specialist degree. It's situated between a typical master's and a typical doctoral level degree, being 3 years and over 90 credits. And so what we're proposing today is two things. For our existing master's program, we are not proposing any changes to our curriculum. We just are proposing a change to the degree type that is awarded from an MS degree to an EDS degree to better reflect that level of training that is provided. We also are proposing to offer that EDS degree program at both the Eugene campus and the Portland campus. Historically, we have just been located in Eugene. However, in the last 3 years, we have started to offer some of our courses at the Portland campus and have really seen a demand and an opportunity for growth in that way. So we're proposing those two pieces to change our MS degree to an EDS degree, and then we would like to be able to offer that EDS full program at both the Eugene and Portland campus locations. Thank you. You can go ahead and advance that. The reason we're pursuing this now is that we've actually really been interested in pursuing that EDS degree change for a long time. And last year, the University of Oregon approved and now does offer that EDS degree We feel that's a better fit with the level of training that we provide. And by changing that degree, it will help to reduce confusion for a lot of our stakeholders. It's confusing to our prospective students because the entry level for school psychology practice is actually that EDS or specialist level training. So when students are seeking admission into graduate programs for school psychology, they're looking for that EDS level training. And I think we lose students because our program is listed as a master's level program. However, we are designed and nationally accredited by the National Association of School Psychologists as a specialist level program already. So this change would not require any changes to our curriculum. We also think this would help reduce confusion from accreditors, licensing boards, and school districts that employ our students, because we find that our staff are having to constantly respond to queries about whether our graduates actually do have that specialist level training. So we're just seeking to provide better representation of the program. And then in terms of our rationale for pursuing this, the change of campus to include both Eugene and Portland campus locations, we are limited in our ability to grow at the Eugene campus. We currently can admit about 12 students per year, including both our master's and doctoral students in Eugene. And the reason for that cap is that we have a lot of requirements for internships and supervised practicum experiences where we need to have K-12 school psychologists as partners who provide supervision to our students. And in our community here in Eugene, there's just a limit to the number of supervisors that are available to do that. So we would like to grow. Our applications to our program are consistently in the 100 to 120 or so applications per year across both our doctoral and master's program. And it's roughly about half of those applications to our master's program. So we have many more applicants than we can admit to Eugene. Over the last 3 years, by offering some of our courses in Portland, we have seen a high level of interest from our applicants, and we have currently about 27 students who are taking classes at that Portland location, but we are unable currently to offer the full program there without approval. We've also recently seen the closing of the school psychology specialist level program at George Fox. So currently there are only 2 school psychology specialist level programs in the state, U of O and Lewis and Clark. So we're seeing interest, we're seeing demand and enrollment, and we are also seeing a loss of other opportunities at other programs for places that students can enroll. At the same time, there's high demand in schools. There's a shortage of mental and behavioral health providers in the workforce for supporting the needs that are pretty significant in schools right now. You can advance the slide, Laura Lee. Thank you. And then this proposal supports, because we're preparing psychologists to go out into schools to work in supporting youth behavioral and mental health, we're aligned with that Oregon Rising goal to accelerate UO's impact on the world, particularly in that area of behavioral and mental health. We have synergies existing already with the Ballmer Institute located at the Portland campus. Our faculty and students are involved with research collaboratively at that campus location. Our Eugene faculty as well have affiliations with both Ballmer Institute and the Prevention Science Institute and have active research happening in that area. So we believe by having school psychology presence at the Portland campus, it would provide great research opportunities for our students and opportunities for faculty collaboration to be strengthened as well. And then finally, we expect that expanding to the Portland campus will help our ability to recruit and serve traditionally underrepresented students. Just having different options for students to attend the Eugene campus versus the Portland campus. Students have different professional interests. Some are drawn to the more urban environment in Portland, access to more diverse urban school districts for clinical training. And other students are drawn to the Eugene campus for that main campus experience, for access to more rural school districts for training, and the differences in research opportunities at the two different campuses. Some students may see a better research alignment with the kind of work happening at the Ballmer Institute versus the kind of work happening in the Department of Special Education and Clinical Sciences in our College of Education. So we believe there's room to grow across those two campuses. Laura Lee, I'll turn it over to you to speak to the financial piece.
Sure. Thank you, Angie. For the last 3 years, we have been piloting an expansion to the Portland campus, and we did so first in the White Stag Portland campus. And now we have an opportunity with the Ballmer Institute to create some real synergy surrounding youth behavioral and mental health here in Portland. The school psychology program is a graduate program. The Ballmer Institute undergraduate child behavioral health is a bachelor level program. So they're complementary but non-overlapping. The slide that I have in front of you is in addition to the budget details that you have in your packet. What you have in your packet is the financial forecast for both the Eugene and the Portland campus. What you see in front of you, though, is just focusing on Portland because that's where the resources would need to be added. Potentially, we already have the program. We're not changing the curriculum. And frankly, we've already recruited students who have been enrolled here in Portland through a hybrid program. And so we've made investments in faculty. We have 2 lines already that we've invested in. We have a part-time staff person who's also here on the Portland campus. So in thinking about the budget and financial sustainability, I can share that this program is already revenue generating. And I want to share a few of the assumptions that have guided kind of our budget and our forecasting. So the key assumptions, and we've seen this over the last 3 years in our students who have enrolled taking courses in Portland, we have about a 60-40 mix of in-state versus out-of-state students. And that's important when you think about that mix for forecasting your financials, because of course, if they're in-state, they're paying less tuition than if they're non-resident out-of-state students. So this is, we have forecasted a similar mix of 60-40. We've also included increases for our faculty and staff over the years. So that increase is already baked into our budget forecasts, including, our annual not our annual, but our 6-year promotions and so on. And this is a graduate level program. And so the way our budget model works here at the University of Oregon currently is that there is a holdback for graduate level tuition, a central holdback. And we've projected a holdback of about 25%. And that's consistent with what it's been sort of on average these past few years. And for me as dean, I was really interested in sort of what's the break even point. Obviously, we want to revenue generate, and we are presently, but the break even point for enrolling students in Portland is 21. We are currently, as Angie said, we currently have 27 students. We've already made the investments in faculty and staff. And we have more opportunities to grow once we're offering an education specialist program. We think we'll get more applications. But in terms of budgeting and forecasting more conservatively, 21 is the break-even point. And we're at 27. 24 of those 27 are full-time students and 3 are part-time students. And so again, we're sort of taking that into the mix. If we were enrolled fully, we would have 8 EDS students in Eugene, and we'd have in a cohort, and we would have 16 in a cohort in Portland. And so we are already demonstrating that this is financially viable and revenue generating, and I'm happy to answer additional questions about that.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Questions?
Yeah, so thank you, Laura Lee. I wondered, I had a couple questions, but on the payroll, so I could use some additional clarification. So are we saying that this roughly $500,000 by fiscal year 30 for faculty and staff, are those all new positions, and are those based here in Portland? And have we, with Balmer just kind of getting rolling here with regards to a lot of mental health focus, I was just curious how much we've really dug down in terms of leveraging what's already going to be on the ground here at Balmer to maybe lessen the overhead impact of this program by using a lot of these other experts that are coming in for the rounding out of the program.
So the first question was, are those new hires for Portland? Those hires already exist. So they're not new. Those are investments that we've already made, but they're, I wanted to represent those costs on our budget.
So that's not incremental hiring.
Correct.
Okay.
Those are investments that we've already made. And your second question was, can we leverage the resources, the lines, the faculty, and the staff that will be part of the Balmer Institute? And I think that answer is yes, asterisk. The Balmer Institute is focused on developing its undergraduate child behavioral health program. And the focus is similar and overlapping, but it's an undergraduate program that requires undergraduate teaching as well as supervision through its clinical faculty in school settings. Those faculty may or may not be school psychologists. One of them is. And we've already leveraged some research opportunities that those Balmer Institute tenure track faculty are engaged in, and opportunities for our graduate students. There are other opportunities to probably interact and leverage those strengths. However, the professional responsibilities, workload, and teaching assignments of those Balmer Institute faculty are within the Balmer Institute's Child Behavioral Health Program and micro-credential graduate training program. So I think in time, as that program launches and is steady state, we're still in the growth building stage. I think there may be some opportunities. Our pilot program launched here in school psychology a year before the Balmer Institute launched and opened. So we are established with the faculty that we have. We also are able to provide hybrid and online instruction, accessing the expertise of Eugene faculty. And I think once we have an EDS standalone program here in Portland, we may identify future opportunities to collaborate. So that's why I say yes, asterisk. I think those opportunities are abundant, but they're still being identified as the undergraduate program takes off. This is the first year that we've had students here in Portland for the Child Behavioral Health undergraduate program.
Thank you.
Can I add a couple of examples, real quick examples?
They should be really cool.
Yeah, we are already, I just wanted to highlight, we are, for example, school psychology had one course in our EDS level program taught by a Balmer faculty last spring, given their expertise in child development. And one of our graduate students is serving as a graduate employee for the Balmer Institute this year, supporting their undergraduate course delivery. So just wanted to give you a couple of those examples of how we are leveraging those existing resources.
Thank you, Angie.
I'd like to
I had one more quick one. You made the comment that the faculty's already been hired. So I'm kind of a little bit of a chicken and egg question here is I mean, this sounds like a great program, but if we weren't to approve it, what does the faculty, it sounds like we've kind of already approved it if we've already hired the faculty.
Well, what we're proposing is an EDS. We are currently offering a master's degree. So if you don't approve the EDS, we would still offer the master's degree. We have the master's degree. We've been offering a master's degree since the 80s. I think it would hinder our ability to grow because the master's degree, as Angie discussed, is confusing to employers. And I think one other kind of caveat, Andy, is we've been able to offer a partial program out of a Portland location. What we're asking for is to have a standalone Portland site so that it gives us more wiggle room to grow and invest in that program and not necessarily have it yoked to Eugene. And so if you didn't approve it, we would probably proceed with what we have been doing for these past 3 years, but I don't think it's optimal for the College of Education or frankly, or the Balmer Institute.
Were you really talking about renaming the program then, EDS, and not having the masters, or is it both now, or?
The EDS would replace the master's
Okay.
degree. So it is a degree that reflects the level of intensive and specialized training. It's 94 credits. The University of Oregon requires 45 credits for a master's degree. So we're currently offering a master's degree on steroids. But our accreditor and our industry standard is a specialist level training that's 90 credits. So what we currently offer is consistent with industry standard and accrediting standards.
Thank you, Dean McIntyre.
I'll move.
So, Chair Hawarda.
Yeah.
I'll
We-
move approval of the program.
We have a motion to approve it. Do we have a second? Second, thank you, Ed. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. It's
Thank
approved.
you very much for the colleges coming to present some more of your time. I know you spend a lot of time in this and we appreciate it. Thank you for the board's patience. We're still working this through, as you can see, and the dean's taking notes and the provost is taking notes, and we're streamlining this more. So the whole idea is that this is a quick presentation so that the board can go on to its important work, and that we've done the important work already before we come before you.
For those listening, thanks, Elisa, because Elisa chairs this, and there was a meeting ahead of time. It was a change to try to make sure there's an opportunity to vet and ask all these questions, which was done. And then at the board meeting, to try to streamline, this was the first time we tried it. We think the first part worked really well. And what we just need to figure out is the streamlining at our board meeting. But thank you, Elisa, and the whole committee, because I think the feedback we got was it was really appreciated to have that chance to vet it with the committee. And so that was very good. Thank you. Chris, do you have any final comments?
Just that, yes, to reinforce what Elisa is saying, we're going to continue to work on this as we move forward. And I was grateful for the meeting last week and for this meeting. I think the example we just had was an example of how we need to be mindful of the distinction between the capacity we have on the faculty side. I mean, our budget is mostly caught up in human beings and paying salaries. And it's not always the case that an addition or subtraction of a program translates directly into increase or decrease of faculty capacity. And so that's just a conversation we're going to have to keep having as a group.
Thank you. We're going to move on, and we're going to talk about a flourishing community, and we're going to try to catch up a little bit. We're about 20 minutes behind, but we think we might be able to do it here. And that is an amendment to our bylaws with regard to a stipend paid for particularly our student trustees. And Cody, if you would walk through that.
Thank you.
Quickly.
Thank you. See, next slide, Jennifer. So really quick, just 2 slides. Some background. One of the primary documents governing board processes is the board bylaws. And currently our board bylaws prohibit trustees from receiving compensation other than general reimbursement expenses for travel or activities in service of a board meeting. And there's been recent movement in the last couple of years around the state to try to provide some compensation for individuals of lower income to advance equity for those to make it a little bit easier to serve on a board. Including Oregon State University recently changed their policies in that same spirit. Next slide, please. And so the proposed amendment before you would basically be in that same spirit also and offer student trustees who earn $50,000 or less to be eligible for the same compensation amount that other Oregon board members and commissioners are eligible for. That amount is set at $178 per day and is set by the state. It's tied to federal per diem rates. And so the proposal before you would be to amend our bylaws to advance this amendment.
Before we make that proposal, Jenny, do you have a quick amendment?
It's always dangerous to put a bylaws change that's tied to the statute in front of a former lobbyist, because of course I want to dive in, which is, so 100% support this. I think we, in solidarity with our friends at OSU, we should probably adopt this as well. couple, I would make some minor changes just in the language, not in the spirit of it. I think it's fine. I personally don't think it needs to be limited to student trustees. I think any trustee who meets this income threshold should be eligible for reimbursement. And I can conceive of a day when we might have that on our board. And I would also not tie it, just the way it's written, the concepts here are fine, the way it's proposed, it ties it to legislative assembly per diem, which is what that 178 per day is. I think that's unnecessarily specific, even though that's what's in statute. I think we could just say per statute. So whatever the statute says that the pay should be, then that's what we would pay our trustees who earn under $50,000.
So there are two amendments. One is to amend it to say per statute, and the second one is to remove the word student.
Do we,
Nope.
do we
Sure,
need
what
to,
are,
I was going to ask our attorney, do we need to specify the statute that we're aligned to?
It's already in there. It just adds additional language of what that statute says.
I would
Oh,
like the
okay.
language to be pretty clear that we are not putting ourselves under that statute. It's complicated. in
I
Oregon
understand.
law, but University of Oregon is not a state agency. We are an instrumentality of the state. Essentially, statutes do not apply to us unless the legislature specifically says that they do. And so we always try to take care in our office not to put ourselves into a position where we are going to be considered the equivalent of a state agency. So as long as the language is clear that we are linking ourselves to a statute, but not binding ourselves to the statute.
Is there a way to pull that language up that's proposed? I know we have it in our packets, but I don't have it.
Here's what we're going to do. I think everybody's in favor of this, and we're making some good points that might need to just be emphasized. So what we're going to do is we're going to vote on this tomorrow if we need to. We're just going to revisit it. We may choose not to change it at all, but everybody believes in this in spirit. So let's just make sure we get it right. We're going to be back here tomorrow. We can easily do it at that time. Connie?
Really dumb question. Does this have to be in the bylaws?
I can answer that. Trustee Seeley, the reason why we need an amendment to the bylaws is because the bylaws currently prohibit
Got it,
any
thank you.
payment. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have a couple options, and we're just gonna,
That's
you
what we
know,
do.
all good intentions. So we're gonna just revisit this with Kevin, make sure we get it right, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's not
Absolutely.
gonna-
I will raise one other concern that I will take a quick look at this evening as well, which is the ability of the university to pay a stipend to an employee who may otherwise be on salary here. There are some limitations on our ability. to
That's
pay.
specifically prohibited by statute, so I think you're covered, even though it
Okay.
doesn't apply to us.
What we thought would be so simple. But that's fine. That's fine. We'll deal with it tomorrow. Okay. Every year, and Michael, how are you? We have our capital report update. It's always very helpful. Keeps us on path to see what all the changes that we're making each year. We have 35 minutes set aside for you, Michael, and we will give you the full 35 minutes. I'll give you a time check if we're getting out of line. We're going to get back on, but this is, we want to make sure you have full time to do this.
All right.
Pick one.
Thank you for that introduction. There are 3 eye charts that I apologize for in the packet, but we have full size going around, and hopefully they make them to you, Provost, and you can just leave them here on the corner. Those that are in the room that want a copy so that they can actually read it, we'll leave it there on the corner. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk about our 10-year capital plan. You can tell I'm excited. I got up here a little bit before I was ready, or before I was called, so apologize for that. We're going to talk about a number of things related to our capital plan. The purpose of this presentation is to give everybody a sense of what is it that is currently happening on campus, what are things that we think are about to happen or are likely, and then what are some things that are over the horizon that may maybe not happen. And then we'll talk about some of the factors, some of the filters, if you will, as we look at our capital plan. This is the first eye chart that you have. This is our project cost escalation tracking. And what's emphasized in the green box is really the main point, that we've experienced a significant amount of escalation over the last 10 years, 66%. about half of that in the last 4 years. The way the spreadsheet is laid out is that the second row in the dark green is what the annual escalation is using a national cost estimating firm using Portland as their basis. We think that Eugene sometimes is a little bit more than that. So the dark figures are the things that are the dates and the cost per square foot for the total project cost. And then the lighter text is as each year we escalate it by the amount that's at the top of the sheet.
If I could just add one thing. One of the reasons we started doing this is trustees had questions about, well, how does this project and its cost compare to other projects we've done? And you couldn't just share raw numbers because you have time value of money and the fact that there's been inflation. And so hopefully what this does is help you understand when you look at different types of projects, how do they compare when you do some rough estimate of inflationary costs over the time period since they were built? And so, for example, you'll notice that our research and science spaces are very, very expensive because those types of projects require a very large investment per gross square foot. Whereas when you look at some of the housing costs, we've managed to keep those costs lower because of the requirements. And so it just gives you a good tool to use to compare projects.
For everybody's benefit, take one item, walk it across so everybody understands exactly what this means.
Absolutely. So maybe taking the top one there, the Price Science Library, we bid that out in 2015. You can see the dollars per square foot. Again, the eye chart, I'd save one for myself. I think it's $415 a square foot. As you go across each
445, I think.
Thank you. 445. So the line just above that tells you what the annual escalation was for that year. And so that is the amount that we then escalate that number. So you get to the far right. And if we were to build that same project today, you can see what that cost would be.
761.
That's how this project is set up. And every year it's a 10-year look back. So 2014 was the first project that we have. Next year, the EMU project will probably not be on there. We'll keep adding some newer projects. But as Jamie said, the purpose is to help put things in a context and see that costs do continue to go up.
The original cost, Michael, was what we actually paid. Was it the original budget? It was actually paid, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and it's the all-in. It's not just construction. It was, and so we would gladly build a building for $445 a square foot today, but we're not close. We're at 761. So then the next eye chart is the one that sort of talks about our performance. How are we doing in a variety of categories related to our budget adherence, the program, the deferred maintenance that we have encountered, because a lot of times that surprises us when we start doing a project. There's more than we anticipated, which would then have a negative impact to the schedule and the budget. So green is good, naturally. Yellow, not so good. Red, and you can see the definitions down below as to what we're using as our criteria. And we started this spreadsheet because we wanted to be as transparent as possible about what are we doing in regards to these sort of 4 metrics. Are we keeping our program? And you can see that column is virtually green with 2 exceptions. So that's been our main priority, is making sure we can deliver in all of our projects, the program, the activities that were anticipated.
Michael, we see this each year. Thank you, but we only see it once a year. Would you again, please take us across Tykeson Hall as an example, walk across it and spell it out. And thank you, Amy Tykeson and your family.
Terrific. Yes. So we have a red dot there for the budget because as you look earlier, the approved
Go
budget
from each square, left to right.
So Tykeson Hall, June 2019 is when it was substantially complete. That's the second column. Third column is the approved budget that we brought to the board or was legislatively approved.
That was 34.3.
Correct.
Million.
45.5 is where we ended up. The square footage, in fact, grew. That's one of the reasons that the budget was much larger. The dollars per square foot, again, this is all in construction design, any fees, $712 a square foot. So in red, we exceeded the required or the approved funding for the project. So that's why that dot is red.
Yep.
Because we basically added a basement. We dug out underneath. So that impacted our schedule. It took longer to complete, but we were able to maintain the program that was originally anticipated. So that's the next column. Unanticipated deferred maintenance issues. We didn't run into that because it was a brand new building. So that was pretty easy. And then LEED certification. We're really proud of that. We got a LEED gold. You see most of them are gold. There's one that's platinum and a couple others that we're still waiting to get the final designation. And then some comments. And in this case, we just talked about the additional scope, the basement, and then building out the 4th floor. So that's how we align the spreadsheet, and hopefully that's helpful information.
I think it is helpful for everybody just to see that they can look at it then on their own.
This is a slide that I include every single year because I think it's that important, that everything that we do related to our capital plan has to support our mission, our priorities, and the research areas of focus. And we use our building condition assessments, our infrastructure needs, and our space needs analysis to help us determine which projects are worthy of being on our list. For those that are new, this is just to give you a sense. Our geographic footprint is more than Eugene and Portland. So we have a number of facilities across the state. This is a couple of pictures of some projects that were completed here in Portland, as well as in the middle, Eustis Hall that was recently renovated and opened for use this about a year ago. The top right, you see phase 2 of the Knight Campus project underway. So, and the far right, that is the duck in Eugene, but it's a placeholder for the one that's going to be up here in Portland. So just wanted to let you know that. Speaking of Portland, I just want to take a moment just really to celebrate what we accomplished. And I say we because a lot of people sitting behind me, a lot of people back in Eugene, it's just really phenomenal. And I think the board really needs to understand in 2 years and 3 months, we closed on that property in June of 2022. And here we are sitting in the end of fall term of 2024, and we finished all the projects that we had set out to do. And that is just phenomenal. $65 million, 11 separate projects. We had 12 different consultants. We had 16 folks just from our design and construction group, which is half of our entire design and construction staff. There's a lot of folks up here that were part of that, but just wanted to really highlight that that's a really significant thing that we're really proud of. And we have one request. Please don't ask us to do it again. That was really, really hard, but we're really proud of the collaboration, the teamwork, the design team, the contractor, the folks that were in the programs that were impacted as they moved from White Stag to this campus, Jane and Chuck and their teams, and the support and the collaboration. It was really great.
Hold on, Michael. Cody, would you just make a note in the minutes of our collective thank you from the Board of Trustees? And Michael, for mentioning it like that, you know, we don't do construction for a living, and to hear you who does it all the time point out what an amazing effort that was in that time frame. So thank you, and we appreciate it truly from all of our trustees of the work you did and everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just by point of reference, it would normally take us about 4 years to do what we've accomplished up here, but it was great leadership, great decision, great teamwork. And so I, on behalf of a lot of people, say thank you. We appreciate that. One more thing about Portland, and we talked about this a year ago when we were here, not here in Portland, but before you, talking about the child behavioral health building. And again, another great thing, it's ranked #1 by the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. And that's a significant achievement for a project that is going to do so much for the community, for the state, for the university. So just wanted to highlight that you see some of the facts up there about the support from the state. The university has really stepped up with a 25% match. That's more than what we normally do, but that was to get as many points in the rubric for the HEC evaluation. And so, again, just wanting to take a moment to celebrate something that it's not yet funded. It hopefully will be, but we are already in the design effort to be able to make this a reality as soon as we can.
And I'll just add a word. So it is a huge deal that we worked with a team that included faculty and others to put together this project proposal. And there's a very strict rubric that HEC uses to rank these projects. And I'm really proud. I mean, I don't know that we've ever come out number one. I'm trying to think on the list. So that's amazing. I will share the governor came out with her recommended budget a couple days ago. She did not end up pulling projects from the ranked order of the HEC list. She ended up focusing on some funding for deferred maintenance and then a Portland Fine Arts project. However, that doesn't mean often the legislature will end up still moving forward with the HEC's rank list. And so we are going to be working with the other universities to really advocate that the legislature consider that full ranked list at which we are at the top for the legislative session. So this is not over. It hasn't really, I mean, it has begun, but we have a lot of work to do through legislative session, which will start towards the very end of January.
Michael, would you also speak to who pays for the Q bonds, who pays for the G bonds, and then who pays for the U of O match?
You want to cover that, Jamie? Sure.
Yeah. So basically, the good news is if we're able to get this funded, the state will cover all of the payments on the Q bonds and the G bonds. So we will be getting something like $53 million from the state, which would be amazing. And this is the structure that we have used for our other state funded projects like Villard and University and Friendly and Eustis. It's a wonderful program. We as the university then are responsible for some type of match. The match is actually higher on a percentage basis because it's a new building. And my colleagues and I are going to be working very hard on fundraising around trying to have philanthropic support for this, but we will need to backfill if that doesn't come through in terms of the UO match portion. But we'd really like to see this building built in partnership with our donors and alums.
So as much as we lament about wishing we had more state funding, there are other ways that we get it. And this is not approved, but there have been others, of course, that have been. So thank you.
All right. Now to the third and final eye chart. If you can't see the screen because it's behind you, it's this bar chart, Gantt chart, if you will. This again is really the meat of our 10-year capital plan. Starting from the bottom, working upwards in purple, those are studies, things that are looking at what ifs, what are the possibilities. In blue are the projects that they're over the horizon. Maybe there's been a study, there's an identified need. What's in red, we're working on, but it hasn't come before you for approval. And so green means go, you've seen it, it's been approved, and work is happening. In some cases, it's getting close to wrapping up. So that's going to be a theme when we go through the next slides. Green, you've seen it, it's approved. Red, we're ready to come perhaps at the March or the June meeting. And then blue, someday those might become a little bit more firm. Another way of looking at that is just as a map, and I already repeated myself about the colors, but you can see it really covers a wide part of campus, and especially the green and the red. One of the red, of course, is Friendly Hall. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And not to forget that we are here in Portland. There are, as much as I was celebrating all that we have done, there's still a few things left to finish up here. We haven't fully closed out the projects, but we're able to use them, what we call substantial completion. So the buildings are being used, but we have some additional contract and paperwork to finish up. And then our acoustics research lab, which is down on the waterfront. So I'm going to break it down into just a couple other projects and then a little look at the studies. And again, using the bar chart, I won't repeat myself again, but you know what green and red and blue mean. And here is the projects that are underway. You've got the Heritage Project in the bottom left. That is on track to be finished for a year from now, ready for the fall of 2025 occupancy. The Knight Library exterior renovation, we've completed 2 phases of that. The 3rd phase will be begun this summer. And then we have the second phase, or the second building of the Knight campus up there at the top of the screen. And then Friendly Hall, mentioned that a moment ago. This has been funded by the legislature. We'll be working on that conceptual design and then, excuse me, and then schematic design, and probably come with a fully developed program and budget probably in the June timeframe. I don't know if we'll be far enough along in the March timeframe to give you a good sense of that project. And then over the horizon, the Knight Library, they funded a study about a year ago to look at what could be a reimagined library. School of Journalism and Communications also did a study looking at their additional needs. And then there's a third building that will likely someday come, we hope, for the Knight campus. Then looking at the what we call other projects, this kind of lumps together some housing, athletics, and just looking at what, again, is what are we working on, and then what's coming down the pike. You can see the athletics indoor practice facility in the top left. Can say that we've finished some of the financial negotiations and land swap with the city, and the project itself is getting ready to move Leo Harris Parkway, and then that sets the stage to be able to create enough room to then build the indoor practice facility itself.
That discussion's been going on since I know I became a trustee. Is there a date that we think we might break ground on that?
So the next phase is moving Leo Harris Parkway, and that will happen in about 2 weeks. They wanted to wait, make sure that we were not hosting a playoff game before starting to tear up the road. So now we know that's not going to happen. That's moving forward. That'll get done before the next football season, and then the breaking ground would be in December of 25.
And that's fully paid by a generous donation.
Correct. That's correct. No. And we're going to, if you've got questions about how we're paying for some of these things, there's a slide at the end, and I'll get to that. We also have a project that we've talked about, the Romania site development. We had your approval in September to enter into a term sheet. We've done that. We're in the process of negotiating a ground lease. So hope that that can get resolved soon, but those things are not always easy to predict. Negotiations never are, but I don't think it's quite as difficult as some of our bargaining units, I hope.
Sorry, but what was going into the Romania building again?
So we're going to take down what's there except for the showroom. We'll leave the showroom. And so we're going through the historic preservation piece on that. We're going to put in a hotel, 2 residential buildings, and then parking, a structured parking to support that. And then on the ground floor of all those buildings will be retail.
Thank you.
And then right. This will be an arm's length agreement. We will collect rent from the developer. They'll take all the risk. They'll invest all the capital and get the investors to make that, I think, a great project. And then we have the KI building on track to be finished in March of 25, so that then housing can take that on and start getting it ready for summer conference use, and then ultimately our students' use in fall of 25. Working on the next generation housing as we continue to see a desire to increase our first-year class, to move some of our students, our first-year students that are currently in Riley and Barnhart, closer to where campus services are, and to also reduce the number of triples that we have across the housing stock. So those are all the reasons for the next generation, and we'll come before you soon with that budget and program. And then off the screen are a couple of the Barnhart, once that's been vacated, turning that into potentially turning that into more graduate level or apartment style units. And then there's a second phase of some utility. Here's a list of the studies that we're anticipating that will happen. One is the electric boiler study, and that's almost complete. I believe you'll get a presentation this afternoon with Jamie and Brian and Steve. And then there's some others that we see. The science complex is something that we know needs some attention, and Mac Court is a question that this board and many others ask, what's happening? We are using it, but it's in a tactical way, not a strategic way. And so what is it that we want to do? We also have the Riley Hall, which is another facility. It's very small, very inefficient, off campus. And what should we do with that particular site? And then along Villard, we'd like to see some opportunity to increase the residential development along Villard that's sympathetic with the community. And again, looking at these in a more visual way, the top right is the Villard Street, envisioning townhomes. Mac Court, of course, is identified there in the middle. And then the science complex is really looking at all of those buildings. How would we do something that would be effective in advancing our strategic plan related to the research and the sciences?
Michael, as you go forward, just give you a time check, a little more than 10 minutes.
All right, we should be okay, and maybe give you a couple of minutes back unless you have lots of questions, which I'll say several of you reached out with some questions and comments. I welcome that. Hopefully you can tell I really love this stuff. And so if you want to connect outside of this meeting, I'm more than welcome. I'm more than happy to. Yes.
Right, just on this slide, the Mac Court study, is that a study about what we're going to do with that building or the ground on which Mac Court currently sits? Or is there an assumption, is it blown open?
The simple answer is yes. It would be looking at all of that. And of course, what's really spectacular about that building is what really happened inside it. The architecture itself is not that great. It's been modified over the years, but that's an important conversation for us to have and to go very carefully before we make some decisions.
I was more curious if this direction had been baked in to set the strategy, but it's helpful to know that.
Yeah, no, I think you talk to 10 people on my staff, you get 10 different ideas of what we should do. But again, back to that earlier thing, we need to support the university mission, our priorities, and our research direction. So a couple of things that we also think about in terms of the capital plan, what else drives this effort? And I'll talk about each of these here in just a minute. Deferred maintenance, this is something I strongly dislike that title because it makes it seem like there's things that we should be doing that we're intentionally not doing, and that is not true.
What title would you like? And you should change it for next time.
Well,
you can continue, but that's fine.
It's a term that is recognized. Everybody talks about what is your deferred maintenance, and it just wanting to help people understand that it's like in our house. You might have a wonderful house that you've taken great care of, but at some point that roof is not going to be functional. That's deferred maintenance. You just run out of useful life. So that's on a campus of 8 million square feet, 428 million last year. It's grown for two reasons. One, we did retire some of that deferred maintenance, but what was left got increased by the amount of that first spreadsheet, about 6%. And there are things that last year were not at their calculated end of year life. Now they are. Suddenly we've hit that 30-year or 25-year mark. So I will take the challenge, Chairman, to come up with a better term, but maybe I'll put it parenthetically because deferred maintenance is the term of art. I just don't like what it implies because we take a lot of care and pride in the facilities and are working very hard to be proactive in being what we call program maintenance or preventive maintenance as opposed to reactive and
Mike, using your analogy, is it accurate that if you have your house and your roof is supposed to have a 30-year life, at 30 years, then it hits your deferred maintenance list, even though you might believe you've taken great care of it and it can last 40 years and you want to extend the use of it to save money?
Correct.
Is that fair? So
Yes.
that's also something going on here.
Well, maybe it's just maintenance.
You have complete power to label it however you want. Let's keep moving because
Okay.
we're running out
In
of
the
time.
interest of time, This is something that I find just really phenomenal. $1.4 billion in the last 10 years is just amazing. There are a lot of institutions that don't do this in 20 years or 30 years. And I'll say we did go and look at this. Just over 87% of it is non-E&G. So it's auxiliaries, it's grants, it's philanthropy, it's state bonds. 13%-ish is E&G funds over 10 years. So that's a pretty small number of that. I mean, still in aggregate, it's a large number, but on an annual basis, it's not as much as I had expected when I first started looking at this. Wanted to know, how are we paying for some of these things? Again, these are the current projects, the things that were in green. And you can see, again, gifts and grants are, and state paid bonds are the majority. We have this campus here. We had some internal bank and presidential initiative funds that we used. And there were some other auxiliary funds that were used here. The Heritage Deferred Maintenance, that is E&G funds because that was the match. That one was a 10% match. So that was I think about $7 million or so. AI, can't really talk about that very much in light of the current litigation, and that's why we don't really know exactly how we're going to pay for it, because that is still developing. And I direct any questions to Counselor to answer. For the projects that are likely to come before us here, the acoustic lab is almost entirely gifts and grants. There's a very small piece that's E&G funds. The Friendly Hall, again, has a match, and that's about 7.5, 8 million, I think, for Friendly Hall. It's E&G. Of course, the next generation housing is all going to be auxiliary funds. And then the Child Behavioral Health Building will hopefully have some gifts and grants. Hopefully will be. The state bonds will be approved in this upcoming session. And there might be some additional funds that we need to bring to the project. Almost at the end, I'll try to do this, Jamie, but you know this better than I do, but we do pay attention to what is our debt profile. And we try to keep it between 5.3 and 6, which is our 6 is below industry standard of 7. We're at 5.6. We do this every year. So fiscal year 24, our debt ratio was 5.6%. And it's been roughly, I think, as high as 5.8, but around 5.3, 5.4 many years. Anything else I left out, Jamie?
No, Jeff will have a slide on this when we get to Treasury.
Right. And then two last slides. Again, these are the projects that have been approved, just to show you that it's almost $500 million that is in the works right now. The majority of that, of course, is phase 2 of the Knight campus. But then there's also the repairs to KI, the housing transformation project phase 3. That's a tear down of Hamilton. Hamilton's at the corner of Agate and 13th, and turning that into green space that used to be called Humpy Lumpy. That's where Unthank sits right now. So that's all connected to that. And the outdoor, the sand volleyball courts will be part of that as well. And then finally, the last slide, these are the projects that we think will be coming forward. Romania, we don't know what that's going to cost, but again, as I said earlier, that's not going to be university funds, but that's almost another $500 million. So we're busy. We love it. We're the country western song. We like it. We love it. We want some more of it. But this is something that I think really does move the needle when we talk about flourishing, and we talk about the built environment is what really matters to people. And you can see it in this campus. We've taken a campus here in Portland that was loved and appreciated, but underfunded as a private institution. I think we've really transformed it with the work that we've done up here. And I will get out of the way before you talk about this topic.
We have time for 2 questions if there are questions.
Go ahead.
Because mine's real quick. Sand volleyball courts. I guess I didn't pick up on that. Is that for collegiate sand volleyball or just recreational? It's the
No,
it's the thing we've been wanting.
Yes,
Great.
yes. It is for the. I mean, it'll be there available for students, but it's primarily built to the standards for the NCAA.
Campus Planning Committee approved the design just last month. It's been on the process for several years, but it's getting
I
close.
thought you were going to say the board approved that. I thought, oh. So good to know.
And I just wanted to make a comment on the deferred maintenance that you so dislike the term, but when we go back in time, the projection of where that curve was headed was up and away, and the efforts and the work of Michael and his team has kind of tamed that curve to where it's flattening off. So I want to. We oftentimes don't celebrate, and that's not one that people look to celebrate, but I think it is worth acknowledging the work that's been put in over the last number of years to make sure that is declining rather than increasing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we first looked at that back in 2013 and 2015, we projected about a $600 million deferred maintenance. So what we've been investing in with our funds and with the state funds, we've been able to slow that growth. It does continue to grow for the reasons I mentioned, but thank you, Andy. That is something that we also are very proud of.
So encourage you, this is it for information. If you have any questions, as Michael said, please do send them to him. David did that. Michael responded. Appreciate if you copy Marcia and me just so we hear what's going on, but you don't need to, but we like it. So he's great about responding. And so is Jamie, who did the same thing. So thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. All right, Jamie.
And I've got a co-pilot on this one. Angela's joining me.
Chair of the tuition advisory board process.
So this is the beginning of a discussion to remind all of us on the tuition setting process and what we do and all the steps involved. So go
Yes.
ahead, Jamie.
All right. You want to kick us off? Sure, absolutely. Can you hear us? Are we on? Can you hear me
And,
okay?
You have
All right.
until 10 after.
All right, we will be very speedy.
We will. So we are going to talk a little bit about process first. I'm sure many of you are aware of TFAB or TFabulous, as we call it. It's an advisory group to the president charged with developing undergraduate tuition recommendations and reviewing all of our administratively controlled mandatory fees, course fees, housing fees, and graduate tuition proposals each year. So there are 21 members of the committee. It is a large group to wrangle, and Jamie's team does a great job doing that. We have 5 student representatives, 2 faculty, 1 drawn from the Senate, and then a myriad of staff that have different stakes and expertise to bring.
I'll just remind folks on the undergraduate side with the guaranteed tuition, all the students who are undergrads on campus, their tuition is locked. And so what the committee is thinking about is how you price that next cohort that are coming in next year, with the idea being that we set that pricing before people make a decision about whether they want to come or not.
Yep, 100%. And just a reminder too, all of our meetings are in person and open to the public. Okay, so we've had a very busy fall term, and as the newbie around and having the opportunity to co-chair with Jamie, this has been an amazing learning opportunity for me to learn how the University of Oregon works from a financial perspective. So we've spent a lot of time going over historical and comparative data, UO budget information, and then background on the Public University Support Fund, and then as Jamie mentioned, a lot of time talking about the guaranteed tuition program and learning quite a bit as a group about that. We had a primer on all of our financial aid programs, and then I've spent a lot of time and had a lot of great questions about long-term financial projections that have been really, really helpful for everyone to really wrap their mind around the status of our financial projections as a university, just like Jamie has presented to this group, and the university's plan for cost management. So this is what we have coming up for the winter term. In January, we will be co-sponsoring with ASUO a student forum. So we partner with ASUO to very broadly market this opportunity because we really do want students to take interest and to participate and have their voices heard. TFAB reviews proposals on those administratively controlled mandatory fees. So that's our Urban Memorial Union fee, a recreation fee, and health services fees. So we will be hearing proposals on that and how we split those up. Then, of course fees, our housing and graduate programs, and any other proposals that we receive. And of course, one of the biggest issues, discussing our undergraduate tuition rates. Then the group will make those recommendations to the president, and he receives input during a forum that he will be hosting in February. And then those recommendations are posted for community comment before they are finalized and brought to you in the March meeting. And just a nod to just what an open and transparent process this is. If you haven't seen the website, everything is posted on there. So our meeting minutes, the presentations that the entire committee hears and receives, as well as just a really transparent look of what the process actually is. Jamie and her team have set up this process, and how long has it been?
I don't know.
A while.
I don't know, 6-7 years probably.
6 or 7
is a
years.
guess.
Yes. And really, it is a model of how to have really open and transparent methodology for these really, really important conversations going forward. Anything that I missed, Jamie? All right.
So I'm going to talk about our projected cost drivers for next year. And one thing, just as background for folks who are new, in prior years, and this was before the pandemic, I think people now have a better sense of inflation and the idea that costs go up because of recent market activity. But years ago, we used to hold these student forums, and we'd get questions from students like, why do you have to raise tuition? And people didn't really understand that just for us to keep running the institution and keep doing exactly what we're doing, it gets more expensive each year because salaries go up and benefit costs go up and these other things go up. And so we developed this methodology of trying to estimate for TFAB, not every single cost that could possibly go up, because that is pretty much impossible, but what are the major drivers that cause our costs to go up year over year? And specifically, we focus on the E&G fund because that's about 80% funded with tuition. I think it's 78 or 79 these days. And so we just want people to understand what these cost drivers are. And so we do have the updated analysis for this coming year. It is an expensive year for us. I'm going to hit the highlights in the interest of time, and then happy to answer questions. Every year, by far, the factors that go up the most are compensation and personnel related costs. And that makes sense because 80% of our budget is tied up in people, which is fantastic. If you look at the data, we are looking at a year over year cost increase of about 28 million is our estimate. So what that means is just to run the university the way we've kind of run it, it's going to be $28 million more recurring forevermore on the E&G fund. The way that breaks up, that top number, our largest number, that does represent compensation cost increases for many different employee groups. What we've done there is literal payroll projections where we're looking at current labor contracts. We're looking at our announced salary package for our officers of administration and projecting those things forward. Where we don't have an existing contract, we do one of two things. We either look at historical patterns, or if we have offers on the table that are higher than historical patterns, we put our offers on the table into this analysis. And so you can see that what we're estimating right now is about 19.5 million in total cost increases. That represents all of our different employee groups. It does hit a number of people. I'm not going to read them to you, but you can see it's thousands of people. So it's not huge increases for any one person. It's increases for all of our faculty and staff. The next one down is medical costs. Just to remind folks, by state law, we are required to participate in PEB, the state's healthcare program. And so every year they're announcing increases to those programs. We pay on average, number off the top of my head, I think it's $19,500 per employee for healthcare. That is the U of O's contribution. The employee pays 5%. We pay at least 95% of the premium. The next one's a big one. You may have read in the paper that the PERS board, so we are just like state mandated healthcare. We are required by law to offer PERS to our employees. PERS is significantly underfunded. And so you may have read in the paper recently, Steve actually sent me a link to this when it came out, that the board announced their new increases for the next biennium. We knew that was coming. They had kind of given us a heads up early, but we didn't get the final numbers until recently. What that means is that we, just to keep our benefits the way they are, so we're not getting new benefits for anybody, but just to keep the benefits the way they are, the institution is going to be contributing significantly more to PERS starting in fiscal year 26, which is next year. If you look at the numbers, our best estimate is that is going to increase our cost base on a recurring basis by about 7.6 million in our E&G fund. Now we have an interesting thing happening here this year, which we talked a little bit about when we showed you the long-term projections in September, which is we will not really feel the impact of that PERS increase until the following year, which is fiscal year 27. And if you remember from the long-term projections, that's when things started to go really negative. That is because we have a one-time benefit that we have some buildup of funds in our agency fund that pays out all these benefit costs. And that has to do with people's patterns with taking vacation and sick leave. And also when we hire new folks, they're not eligible right away for some of these programs. And we had a lot of turnover, a lot of new folks. If anyone has questions on that, I'm happy to talk more about it here, or I can take it offline. I know our blended OP program is a little complicated, but the basic story that it's good to be aware of is PERS is significantly increasing their costs. We will see those costs go up, but we won't feel them till the following year because we have this one-time benefit, one-time buildup of funds in our agency. If you keep going down, and I should mention, by the way, all of these costs, just because we're talking about education in general, these same costs hit other budgets at the university. They hit our auxiliary funds, they hit our grant funds, they hit our gift funds. We don't estimate those costs here because those funds are responsible for covering their costs. And so all of our auxiliaries and others are going to have to figure out ways to cover this as well. But we are highlighting the numbers for you that hit the education in general fund and for TFAB, because almost 80% of that fund is funded with tuition. And that really drives into the question of what should tuition rates be for the next incoming school. We keep going down. Yep.
Like in your remarks, to say, how do we pay for that 20? We use tuition to pay for that.
Yeah, so in TFAB, what we generally do is when we get into the January term, we have a tool we use, a calculator that pulls all of these different dynamics together, and then it allows the group to have discussions and look at different assumptions, because they're assumptions about how much you increase tuition rates, how much does enrollment change, how much is there inflation on top of these costs.
Went up zero. How do we pay $28 million?
Yeah, we are in a very, very hard spot if enrollment goes up zero. So that was one of our scenarios. That was actually our bad scenario in the long-term projections. And if we cannot increase enrollment, if you look at these numbers, if we flip to the next page, because I'm taking a hint from our chair that we need to keep rolling, this represents a 4.1% increase on the overall budget. For years, we've talked about the fact that we have to be very careful, particularly on the non-resident tuition side of our budget, of not increasing tuition rates so high that we become non-competitive. And so if we are not able to increase enrollment, we're in a very challenging spot because we have costs going up at a rate that is higher than we have at least historically thought we could increase tuition, particularly on the non-resident side of the budget, which is a huge portion of it. And so we would be in a situation long-term where we'd have to look at things like budget cuts if we can't increase enrollment and come up with other revenue sources. It's just there's some challenging dynamics when expenses are growing faster than you think you can price your products, your services for revenue.
You've done a great job of showing us this information over the last year or more about forecasting out in the future. But just for our trustees, if we have 5,000 students coming in, $200 increase is $1 million. So if it's a $10 million increase that had to be paid all by tuition, 10 times 200, that's $2,000 to cover it by tuition only. You need that for context. So we see a $28 million increase. We're not saying that all has to be covered by tuition, but that's the bulk of how we get our revenue. It's also why we have been counting on an increase in the number of enrollment. That's why we've counted on an increase of non-resident enrollment. And as we need to be thinking this way as we go forward with other expenses that come on. It's the only lever we have to pull, mostly, So it gives it some context. $200 per million for new if there's 5,000 students.
Yeah, it's a little, I'm gonna
I know you're
add
gonna
a
get
little
it,
bit to
Steve.
that.
Don't just
Yeah,
throw
yeah,
that
yeah.
out there, but
So
just it's a big number. Let's just
it's a
say
big
that.
number. Yeah, there is the dynamics with our guaranteed tuition program. I just want to be clear. There
Yes.
is the dynamics that you are graduating a class, the cohort that's paying a lot less because they're 4 or 5 cohorts back. And so you're replacing them with students that are paying a lot more. So on average, I find it actually is equal if you're doing similar type increases each year is equal to if you were doing that increase on the whole class because your graduating class is paying a lot less. Sorry, that's complicated
Fine,
and fast. Happy
fine.
to take things offline.
Go ahead, Dennis.
You touched on this a little bit just now, but I was curious whether we've done in the past at TFAB or anywhere else. You look at costs, you look at what the tuition would be. We have sort of target enrollment numbers. Are those targets a function of the price we set for the market, or is that just sort of a target we think is achievable? Do we do any analysis around if we raise it by an extra 0.5%, what sort of
impact?
Yeah,
Price elasticity.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I don't think we do not, the elasticity of the demand curve, we don't necessarily know for sure.
Sure.
So what we do have is we have detailed discussions looking at what's happened in the past, what the targets are. We usually bring in the admissions folks to talk to us about what they're seeing in the market. We look at financial aid programs, try to understand how competitors are pricing their scholarships. And then we built a tool where we can put in the tool, these are our targets, or this is the base case. But then we often have discussion where people say, well, I'm worried we're not going to hit that at these tuition rates. So let's take that down by 100, 200, 300 students and see the impact. And so we've tried to build a flexible tool so that we can really have a discussion. And generally we end up honestly looking at probably 50 different scenarios because we play around with different assumptions about things that could happen. But it is a really tough thing because one of the things we focus time on is looking at how our pricing compares to other schools. And we are just right at or slightly above market, particularly on the non-resident side. And so that question of if you raise rates higher, what's going to be the impact on student demand is a very important question.
We're going to have a presentation on enrollment, of course, tomorrow. We'll give you one last minute because the goal of this is to let us know it's started. This is all started. And because of the work Jamie's done, it's very thorough. It's very transparent. It's an excellent process. And to have all of us be aware of the financial challenges.
Yes. And
You have 1 minute.
Yep. The final the final thing I will say is I would encourage you to think about that percentage because it is hard. It's right now where we stand today. We're looking at a little over 4% increase. And then that question of where do you find that 4% if you don't necessarily think you can increase particularly non-resident rates that's higher, maybe you can, but it's a question of demand is really a key one. And then just for your knowledge, there's a slide in the back that shows you historically where we've been with all of these different cost drivers in terms of our estimates of what things look like.
Thank you, Jamie. Anta, come on up. So Anta Kulabali is our new internal auditor. You saw her last time. And just as a reminder to all trustees, she reports to 2 people. She reports to our board because internal audit is check and balances internally. She reports to Carl. As the chair, I have a meeting with her every quarter. She's a breath of fresh air. And she's going to share a little bit. We have 2 things to vote on, and we have 1 slide deck, but one is about the charter for internal audit. The second is the plan. She's very busy hiring our internal audit team. So welcome, Anta.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you today to discuss updates and the progress and future plans for the internal audit function. We have 5 key items on the agenda today. I'll start with a brief overview of key changes we made to the audit charter. Then I'll talk about the process behind developing the audit plan before covering planned audit project for 2025-2026. I'll then share some updates on staffing and I'll discuss next steps. Starting with the audit charter, as you know, this is the document that formalizes purpose, objectives, reporting structure of the internal audit function. Best practices suggest that the charter be reviewed at least annually to ensure that it aligns with global audit standards and the university's needs. We made a couple of changes to the most recent version we had, which I think is dated 2019-2020. A revised copy of the document is in your packet, along with a high-level overview of key differences between the charter that was last 2019, 2020, and the new charter, the charter for 2024. There's a key change I'd like to highlight here, and it relates to the board's oversight responsibilities in relation to the audit functions. These responsibilities are understood and followed, but up until recently, they were not documented. I believe that codifying these responsibilities in the charter ensures consistent oversight practices, particularly in times of leadership changes and changes in the university's structure. So we're looking for your
Anta, would you just pull the mic a little bit closer to you?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Is it better?
Yes.
Okay. So the revised document is in your packet, as I mentioned, and we're looking for the board to approve that charter so it can be fully implemented. Moving on to the process for developing the audit plan. As you can see on the slide, that process is broken down in 4 steps. And we believe this approach ensures that the audit plan is comprehensive and actionable. We start with a risk assessment that is both external and internal to identify events that might prevent the university from reaching its strategic objectives. And this involves, reviewing, scanning the external environment to identify potential changes in regulations or industry trends or emerging risks that could either impact the university's operations or impact the university's compliance requirements. Once we have an idea of those potential risks, we then move to the second phase of the assessment that involves prioritizations. And that's when we assess the potential impact and urgency of the risk we identified during step 1. We then move to the draft audit plan where we select projects that are going to help us confirm that the university has the controls in place, has the required controls to mitigate those potential risks. The draft audit plan, the initial scope, and the timeline for the projects we selected is included in your packet. And one thing to note here is out of the 23 risks we identified as a result of the risk assessment, only 17, well, not only, but 17 will be covered. 6 were left out of the audit plan for 2 reasons. One is that in some instances, management is actively working on mitigating those risks. So we wanted to give them time to implement, and mature processes that are going to help achieve this goal. And the second is that we are a small audit function. We don't have enough resources to cover all 6 areas. Excuse me, I think the key takeaway here, though, is that the combination of advisory and audit projects you see on the slides are aligned with the university's strategic objectives for fiscal year 25 and beyond. Next, the staffing updates. I'm pleased to report that we made significant progress in that area. 3 months ago, we had 3 positions to backfill. I'm happy to report that we've identified the top finalists for the audit manager position. We'll make an offer this week. We are also in the final stages for 2 other positions, which are the senior auditor position and the IT auditor position. So hoping to extend offers by the end of next week. This is critical as it will allow us to execute the audit plan in terms of next steps, first priority is to have the board approve the revised charter and the audit plan so we can start working on those projects. And the second priority will be to onboard the incoming team and ensure that they are equipped to succeed. And then third priority is, of course, executing the audit plan. That's all I had for today, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
We're going to make two votes. So I just want to clarify for everybody. The first thing is the audit charter, and in our packet, there was a little table that summarized it, and Anta broke it down into different sections. Most of the things are already included. You edited them for clarity and things of that nature. One thing was for changes to the mandate and charter that was not included. So you outlined a process to be able to do that going forward. The other one was board oversight was not included. This codifies the Board of Trustees responsibilities in relation to the internal audit function, which is the reason you report to us and we have accountability. The others were all included already and you have made a little adjustments to them. Is there anything that we're missing on that summary?
No, I think this kind of captures the most significant edits made to the charter.
Okay. And then the second thing that we're going to vote on is your work plan, which you talked about and outlined for us. And we're saying, sounds great to us. We like what you're doing. And I just want to make an editorial comment on the hiring. Thank you. You had three positions. It sounds like it's going well. Are you running into any roadblocks along the way?
So far, no. And hopefully it remains that way until the team.
Okay. I know everybody stayed up late last night thinking of your questions for our internal auditor. Do you want to share them now? Anybody?
I have a nitpicky one.
Okay, good.
So on this looks really good. On page 109 of our materials, is the charter explaining what you're responsible for.
Dennis, could you speak into your mic?
It says it's elaborating what you're responsible for. And one of the bullets says executing the audit plan, following up on our recommendations, and ensuring corrective actions are taken. Ensure is a very strong word there, and it kind of puts the onus on your office to do those, as opposed to confirming whether or not they have been taken. And I'm just curious if that's the intent, or if we want to change that language to put the onus on the function that should be implementing those corrective actions.
Sure, and that's great feedback. The onus is definitely on management to implement those action plans because the internal audit function doesn't own risk. The management does. So once the audit is completed, once we agree on what needs to be put in place to kind of fix the gaps that were identified during the audit, management has to work diligently towards closing those implementing those recommendations. So all we do is follow up with them every so often to those plans, those corrective action plans have certainly change that wording to make sure it's not.
What word would you use? You're comfortable. You can push back on Dennis. I mean, he's not that tough. If you don't like the word, it's a really good point he's making, I think.
I agree. We could say, follow up with management to confirm that a management action plan has been implemented versus ensure.
You're documenting that corrective action.
Right.
Okay, so that's an amendment to in the charter. Okay. Yeah, Andy.
In your staffing plan, do you see, as you get into the next phase, opportunities for part-time student internship, either the business school or?
Absolutely. This is something I'm hoping to start in fiscal year 26 because I think it's a win-win. It's a great opportunity for students to get actual practical knowledge of internal audit, especially, and it's especially important because I know that's not something they're being exposed to. So it gives them kind of like another perspective of what auditing can be. They realize it's not just about external auditing. It's even so yes, once the incoming team is fully onboarded, once they're comfortable in the roles, we'll definitely start an internship program. I think one existed before the previous team left, so it's just going to be a matter of restarting that and those relationships.
I had just one quick. So we needed to go to Deloitte to help us with some of the required audits that were on schedule because of the fact we didn't have you yet and the team wasn't staffed. So you kind of identified, I think, 25 areas, 17 you can focus on, and some are being done in terms of that difference of 8. But I was curious when there is something that comes up that is, say, urgent, and you have a relatively small staff, how does that process work when we need to maybe bring in a consultancy to help fill in to move something a little quicker? Do you go to, who do you go to? The president or?
That's a great question. And we have about 1,000 hours so budgeting the audit plan to address situations like that where emergencies come up and the board or leadership request that we complete a project. So before we do that, before we add anything to the audit plan or before we revise the audit plan, we'll need to come to you to make sure that the board is okay with us modifying the plan. The audit plan is meant to be flexible. It has to be responsive to changes in the university. So we continuously monitor the things, including the ones that were left out of the audit plan to make sure that they don't become significant, don't pose like serious threats to the university's ability to reach its objective. And once they do, we come to the board and ask them to allow us to revise, pick up some project or put them on the back burner or reschedule them later. There's completely related projects. This risk profile has decreased.
Okay.
So we can fund those new projects.
Good. So it sounds like you're meeting regularly with Steve, and so those discussions go on, and then it would come here if there was something urgent that we needed to reprioritize, or your recommendation was that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I have to add also that there's an audit consulting group that I meet with regularly as well, that provides feedback on those, that would provide feedback as well.
All right, so the wording changed on the charter, removing ensure. We need to know the exact wording we're going to use on that if we're going to vote on this. So what somebody mentioned it.
Well, I think Jamie said.
Well, I just suggested changing the wording from ensuring corrective actions are taken to documenting that corrective actions are
Okay.
taken.
Are you comfortable with that, Anta?
Yes, we could say confirming and documenting, and here documenting the sign.
Okay. So if you're fine with that, is there any discussion from any before we ask for motion? Dennis, thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? Okay. So first, we're going to I need a motion to approve the changes to the charter, and then a second.
So moved.
And a second from Dennis with the changes to the wording. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And then second, we need a motion and a second for the work plan as laid out by Anta. So moved. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you, Anta.
So before I turn it over to Steve, just want to give the board a quick overview, like some context. Data center that Steve and his team just completed was meant to kind of test controls in that area to make sure that they are adequate and effective. The university has about 3 data centers, and these are facilities that host powerful computers and network equipment. Thank you. A network equipment that is used to process, manage, store data. Data centers are critical to the university's digital operations, which is why the review Stephen is thinking it's pretty critical. I'll turn it over to him so he can walk us through the methodology they used and give us an overview of their key findings.
Great, thank you. And Stephen, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And then I know Jeff Harrison is here
Jeff-
as well.
Well,
He arrived.
He
This
arrived.
is his plane.
Come on
His
up.
plane arrived and he's here. Come
Good, I
on
can-
up. We've set aside 10 minutes for this portion, and then we're going to have executive session to talk about the more, I want to say, delicate or subjects.
We'll
Nothing,
get
there's
into more
nothing
detail.
wrong. It's just done in confidence. So is 10 minutes enough for this portion?
Oh, more than enough. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
You want to take it away? Oh, no. I'm going to go on to the next slide. So the scope of this project was to look at access controls of 3 data center, physical and logical security, infrastructure and maintenance to make sure that everything was being maintained as much as we could tell. And then looking at environmental controls like raised floors, fire prevention, things like that. So that was the scope of the review. At a very high level, most of our observations that we discussed with management were around access control. And as we've heard and seen in previous reviews, there's a need to document consistent policies across the data center so that people understand, you know, what they're complying with and what they're supposed to be doing. So that was an overriding finding. And then again, at a very high level, the implementation and monitoring of those things that are within those policies. For example, making sure that you have an inventory of people that are badged, that you maintain their badge and access, that when those badges expire, they're dealt with appropriately and things like that. So there were a number of observations around that we'll discuss. And that's it in a nutshell, at a very high level. Again, management was very cooperative. It did take us a while to wrap this up. I think partially because this was done in the summer when a lot of people were out. So there was a little bit of back and forth on, you know, what the results were and the appropriate remediation and those kind of things. So it did take a while to wrap up. I apologize for that, but we were working with management along the way and saw that they were, you know, cooperative and trying to help us to get to the final report.
Any questions for Stephen on that subject? We are going to get more time with him.
Yeah, we'll review the results and the observations in more detail in our executive session. Right. The only thing that I would add is that you know, a lot of times from an internal audit function, we look at the control gaps, the observations, which we'll review. But I also want to note as part of the assessment scope, we did not have any particular control gaps or observations related to specifically to the infrastructure maintenance and to the environmental controls of the data center themselves. I do want to add that.
Okay. Then the next item will be held in executive session, 11:45. And the board will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Statute 192.66020B for the discussions of a confidential record related to data centers security and on university risk. This executive session will be closed to the members of the public. Public meeting of this, the public board meeting will begin again at 1 o'clock, and we're gonna have that over there. So we're all gonna go. Oh, yes, but the executive session will be over there as well, right? So the library and learning center is where we're going to have lunch, and we're going to have this executive session be over across the way. I'm probably not pointing the right direction, but it is over there, Jane. Thank you for that. Because we don't have a facility here for lunch. I think that's why we're going to go over there. We get to see another building. So that's terrific. And Anta, can you join us for the first executive session? Yeah, okay. Beginning. All right. So this is adjourned until 1 o'clock.
You leave our things, or is it not secure?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of that. I have a former VP at the, you know, oversight.